Hello, everyone. Welcome to my show, Curryup Startup Podcast, a podcast to spotlight Asian leaders and interesting allies. This is your host, Priyanka Komala, and today I have with me a fabulous guest, Bharat Amin, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Huntington Ingalls Industry, one of America's largest military shipbuilding company and a provider of manufacturing, engineering, and management services to the nuclear energy, oil, and gas markets. Bharat, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Priyanka, and I wanna give you kudos for doing this for our young professionals because I wish you had this 40 years ago for me.
That's so kind of you. And hey, I'm so glad you're paying it forward to the community by being on our show. So we're really honored to have you on Curryup Startup Podcast.
Feeling is mutual.
Thank you. So, to our listeners out there, Bharat Amin is a seasoned CIO, Chief Information Officer, and he's held various leadership positions, be it at BAE Systems, including being the Business Technology Officer, the Vice President, and the CIO for BAE Systems' largest sector. So, Bharat, welcome again to Curryup Startup Podcast, and thank you for joining us from Newport News, Virginia.
Glad to be here. Actually, I'm from New Jersey. Actually, right now.
Well, that's pretty cool with remote working, right? Here he is from his home office.
Remotely.
Awesome. So, in this episode, for our listeners, Bharat, I want to share there are three things that we're going to mainly focus on. One is how do we tackle unconscious bias and microaggressions in tech as a CIO? Two, how do you handle digital transformation challenges as a digital disruptor who has tons of experience under your belt? And three, and the most important of all, is what are the three skill sets that every technologist needs to know to be a leader? So, super excited to learn more and hear from you.
All right.
So let me start with this, Bharat. You grew up in Kenya and then you moved to India. So with a cultural upbringing that's diverse, being competitive is always ingrained in Asians, right? That's something that we always feel. And recently you identified yourself as a type A personality who was trained to be competitive, be it at sports and at school. As a leader, how do you balance the urge to win?
Yeah. So, Priyanka, I want to start off with it's so rightfully said, famous African proverb. The proverb says that if you want to go fast, you go alone, and if you want to go far, you go together. So, as a leader, when you have your team, winning is a team sport, not an individual competition. And it's like basketball or soccer. You can't play by yourself. So as a leader, when you have a team behind you and you're trying to create a team, you got to create, think about team sports. And I believe that sometimes losing is a winning because you learn from it, you grow yourself, by learning about it. So there are situations sometimes, when you're solo, we, like you said, we all were brought up in different countries and sports and whatnot. When you're competing with others by yourself, then you definitely want to win, right? And you create that personality. I have a type A. I've always wanted to win, at younger age, but I've realized and learned a lot that winning for yourself is not good enough. You got to win for the team. So that's what I believe. Sorry, I can't hear you.
There you go. So, do you see that as a personal strength?
I think yeah, as I said, I recently wrote about this about an article that I shared about from Nihar Chaya, who actually wrote about when you compete, right? And it's about competition with your peers, and sometimes it takes you into a negative spiral if you don't manage it well. So you need to balance it in terms of we all want to compete and want to grow, but you want to manage it in such a way that it doesn't take you downward spiral, right? So that's what, and I believe that it's good to have. It gives you inspiration when you compete. So it's good to do that, but you got to find a right balance.
I agree with you. Now, let's talk about your role as the CIO at Huntington Ingalls. You're responsible for establishing the company's IT and digital strategy with a focus on cybersecurity. Tell us a little bit more about your role as an IT leader, and do you believe you have a strategic seat at the table to make an impact?
Absolutely. So again, we all talk about are you the CIO of a back office or a front office? And in my current role, that as of January, I am front and centered in the front office. I report to CEO. I have also a reporting relationship with the board. Probably I'll tell you a little bit about that. So this position was created after 9 years of Huntington Ingalls divesting from Northrop Grumman. And at that time, the model, our model still is to be autonomous companies. We have 3 business units, we have presidents, and I was actually the CIO of one of the divisions for the last 5 years. And currently being in a situation where you're thinking about cybersecurity and all this leveraging and all the things we need to do, decision was made that we needed to have a CIO at the corporate, and I was asked to take on that role. So I believe that we have IT has a seat at the table. I mean, I report to the CEO. Some of my bosses in the business units are now my peers, and it's a 9-10-person leadership team, and we work together. And we have a great CEO who's giving us good guidance and giving us a lot of leeway to do what we do best. The part that seat at the table for me is, because I have a charge given to be more on a cybersecurity side, my focus has been that, and we have created a board subcommittee called cybersecurity. Usually most public companies, the subcommittees, the cybersecurity is addressed under audit committee or finance committee. I believe we are one of the very few companies, probably the first in defense, where we have a cybersecurity committee at a board level. And I'm the company liaison representing a company on that committee. So we have a dual seat at the board level as well as at the CEO level.
I want to really applaud your leadership for ensuring that IT has a voice, which is being met across the leadership team. So kudos on that. And I hope a lot of organizations take this as a challenge to really provide a lot of importance to the technology leadership team. So tell me this, Bharat. As the CIO, you're focused on cybersecurity, as you mentioned, governance, which is also very critical in a defense organization like yours, but as well as key digital partnerships, digital innovations, and there's always the risk assessment capabilities of all information systems that you'll have to focus on. What does a day look in your life at Huntington Ingalls?
Yeah, so the day right now is quite different. As I can say that, I started the new role as of January 1st. So I'll give you a little bit of background so you know what my day looks like right now. With this new charge, I got all my CIOs and CISOs got together. We had a kickoff meeting at one of our locations in early February. And we came away with things that we wanted to do. And then comes pandemic, right? So since March 5th, I've not been into the office. I've been working out of my New Jersey home office. I still have a place in Norfolk. And countdown it's 25 weeks and 3 days that I've been away. So normally my day at work would be a little different then, but I'm going to try and describe how I use my day at work as well as currently how I'm doing it. So during this pandemic, the way I start early. I'm an early riser. Start at 5:30. I'm a big believer that you got to energize yourself before you start, working a professional side of it. So I do like 5 to 6 mile walk, a fast walk, early morning, about hour and a half. That also gives me a chance to clear my mind, wake up my mind. I listen to some old Vedic mantras, in a musical form, so they're pleasing, and that gives me a lot of energy to get started. And then the way my day starts is because I'm remote. I have my multiple screens, video camera. Again, I'll tell you a little bit story about that also, because in our industry, it's not viewed very positively about having video cameras, but it can be done safely. And I start my meetings. We have meetings around my team meetings. I do a lot of one-on-ones. We have staff meeting. I attend my boss's meeting. We have right now, we used to have a daily meeting, but right now we have crisis management once a week meeting. That will be tomorrow. So So all those meetings I participate, and we use video. So actually, like they say that communication is more visual, right? 70% is visual than verbal. So you want to see, hear, the cues from the people you're talking to, how, those kind of things. So that's how my day. Now, here's what I've done, even being remotely. I've successfully delivered CIO 100-day plan that I committed to the CEO. That's been delivered on all the things that we were going to do in my 100-day plan. We have developed a vision, mission, and values statement, working with my team on what is that vision 2025 is going to be for HII, and then mission and values. So overall, and then if I have time, I can tell you what other things, because now I'm remote. I don't have commuting time, and I don't have business travel. That has given me some time that I invest in on myself. So I attend webinars, because you just get up, get on a chair, and get going, right? So I'm learning a lot. And then remaining time, I'm going back, like I do an evening walk again to reflect myself on how the day went and what do I need to do better the following day. So that's how my day goes. And it's great feeling. Haven't missed a beat.
I agree. And I really love the fact that you're reflecting on your everyday life, because that's a nice way as a lifelong learner to focus on how do you keep prioritizing your goals going forward. And kudos on delivering your 100-day plan. Amidst the pandemic, there's no excuse in terms of, being a leader, right? You're always a leader no matter what the crisis situation is.
Right. Absolutely.
That's awesome. So let's talk about your journey, Bharat. You started as an industrial engineer. How did you pivot yourself into being a technology leader and ending up as the CEO of such a huge organization?
Yeah, so that is a story in itself. We could
We would
take
love to hear that.
an hour talking about that, right? So what I tell you about my journey, in fact, someday somebody mentioned it, and someday if I ever write a book, the title would be Accidental CIO. This was not my destiny. I did not start off saying I want to be a CIO. And you can see my education. I don't have computer science degree. I'm hardcore industrial. I'm mechanical engineer and industrial engineer. My story started when my first job, and I was, again, you're hungry to not only learn but to show what you can do. And I started in a very small company, and it's a great thing to start in a very small company. I know there are a lot of ways you can go, because there are only 5 engineers, and I was the 5th one. They hired me. The president was an engineer, my boss was an engineer, and there were a couple of others, right? So I could do everything I wanted. So one of the things I was told to say, hey, we were having some issues with, this was a small bathroom accessories company that was building, manufacturing things, and we had some molding machine scheduling problem. And that time, there was back office computers, that, you could hardly see or, hear about it. It's all paper based. So I was asked to say, hey, how can we solve this? And that's when I saw, and I'm a big fan of Steve Jobs. You'll see why. I got fascinated by Apple II. Let me go back for one. When I was at school, you know how when we go to school, you pay for the 12 credits, and anything you do beyond that is free. So as part of a free that we always like to do, especially Asians, I took a class on a computer science 101. That was PL1 language, programming language. And my second class I took was dancing. That I can talk about that some other time. And that prompted me. I think I found my passion that, hey, I could do much better. So long story short, I asked the company, hey, let me buy a Apple II, VisiCalc, and I went on a company car to New York City to buy that computer, put it in, did all the work. They said, okay, wow, you can do this. Can you do this? So they got me into some of the back office of IT, and then my wishes grew on, I think I need to go into a bigger company. And I started a similar journey, when I was given a manual task to do, and I said, thou shalt not do that. I went and got Apple III at that time. It was because the next generation. And the president of the company saw what I was doing. He says, Bharat, why don't you teach this to other people? Now, I'm not a computer science. I've never taught computer science, let alone I don't even have a degree. But that gave me a moment to say, okay, I want to learn myself first so I can teach. And that's what I did. I had evening classes telling people how to use computers. That gave a kind of a nervousness to one of our IT manager there, and he left the company. And the president says, Bharat, if you want it, it's yours. That's how I ended up in IT. So long story short, I would say that I discovered my passion and I followed it all the way. And one of my executives 20 years ago told me that, Bharat, I don't know why we are paying you to do your hobbies.
That's a nice way to look at it, right? But the interesting fact that I read from your journey is your inner drive to always achieve something that's beyond your comfort zone as well. Not just doing it just for the sake of doing it because somebody had asked you for it, but thinking about how can you do a better job and going that extra mile. And I think those are key skill sets that everybody needs to learn. Now, that's a nice segue to what I wanted to ask you next is, as a veteran CIO, what are the top 3 skill sets that every technologist needs to have in their toolbox to be seen as a leader?
Yeah, so soon enough, you'll see if your listeners follow me on my LinkedIn, I'm going to publish something that's going to come out in Asian Upward magazine, a single success strategy. And I've written something about it. But let me just give you, for purposes of what you just asked me currently. So first and foremost, it starts with you as a person. I'm going to say all the techies, you have to take care of yourself first, mind and body, both of it. I say health is the greatest wealth and knowledge is power. So those are the 2 things that nobody can take away from you. It's yours to keep and grow. So you can set your destiny on that. So I would say, and take control of yourself, immerse yourself. You need to create a spiritual awareness around it because it's about you. Once you have done that, now you need to think about external facing. So who do you deal with, right? I always say that most of my success has come through building relationships. Sometimes, they say that, the connectivity is only 6 level deep, right? Around the world. So someday you'll make a connection. You'll make a connection that not only be worthwhile right now, but it will come handy some point in time because they'll know somebody who knows somebody, then gets you to something. So I say build trustworthy relationships. These are not something easy. And I used to tell my staff all the time that if you go out externally, go to a conference, do something, connect with 3 or 4 people that you've never met. Don't just hang around with people you know. You need to expand your sphere of influence, right? So do that. Build relationships, trustworthy of them, and help you grow your influencing skill because now it's easy to give somebody a task because they work for you versus influencing somebody who doesn't work for you to say, hey, this is a great idea, right? So increase your influencing skills. Lead with empathy and have an engagement with your employees and empower them. So that's an external facing. And the third thing I would say, this is for, again, growth, right? Set tenacious goals. They are so big that you know that you cannot achieve them. But then grow into a person who can. And that's about personal development. How do you grow yourself? And get the fear of failures out. Make every failure and a learning opportunity and teach something you don't know. I mean, I did that and it gave me a lot of success. So those were the 3 I would start with.
Those are awesome nuggets of wisdom, Bharat. And you need to follow our listeners. You need to follow Bharat on his LinkedIn because he gives valuable advice and his thoughts on recent industry trends and leadership development. I think that's something that's very crucial for us to learn and engage from each other. And I really love the fact that emotional well-being is very critical. No matter if you're a technologist or any kind of a professional, your mind is your wealth and your power, and you can train yourself to be the best in whatever you set your eyes on.
Absolutely. Start with yourself first. You have to believe in yourself, and then you can do everything else.
Thank you for that advice. Now, you are a seasoned digital disruptor, and I have 2 things that I want you to focus on. One is, What is a challenge you see when you're leading IT divisions through a digital revolution with a focus on cybersecurity? Because a lot of times we see resistance from technology divisions, especially in the digital disruption space. And two is, how do you get executive buy-in for the vision that you have?
So I start with how do you predict future? You build it. You start with that, right? So I always start with you have to have the passion of driving change. And when I came to Newport News, that was one reason they brought me from outside, to bring an outside in perspective, but to drive change on where Newport News wanted to go. And the challenges usually are cultural. I mean, everybody knows it's not about technology; it's the cultural challenges, right? So the challenges that you always face, or you face more often, is not invented here syndrome. Because we believe, I'm proud of the company. We build Navy nuclear ships, aircraft carriers that last 50 years, and they are like real technological marvels. So it's not a small feat to build a floating city, right? So um, but there is always this thing of legacy, that we have come from where we have come from, and we tend to keep all that, and that stops your progress going forward and trying to do things differently. So that is, I always say, challenge the status quo, and if you are comfortable, make yourself uncomfortable, because that's when the ideas and things. So as part of the steps, I have 5 steps to disruption. Someday I've written about it in the past, but you can look it up. You have to cut through bureaucracy, right? So there's a lot of bureaucracy. You got to find a way to cut through bureaucracy. You have to learn how to go against the grain, because you are somebody coming in to drive change. You can't be part of. You have to do things go in an opposite direction. You have to be independently minded, right? So otherwise you become part of a group thinking, and they're going to take you into the more what they know about, the people that they've been there for a long time. You need to have entrepreneurial spirits. That's why I like your startup podcast, that it's for entrepreneurial. You need to have that spirits of, like, I'm a startup. You got to think about, you're a startup every single day. You never become a day older. Like, that was one of Amazon's story, is that it's always day one at Amazon. And then last but not least, I would say you should be willing to take a risk. So those are the kind of things you need to do. Center on a mission. It has to be mission driven and business outcome driven, not technology and shiny tools.
That's pretty amazing. So you're a big proponent of recognizing microaggressions and unconscious bias. A lot of us leaders face these challenges in our organizations. How do you tackle them?
Yeah, so that's the it's a blessing in disguise. Lived and brought up in 3 different continents. You pick up cultures and habits, and sometimes they don't align with where you are in a work environment. So all along my upbringing, and I forgot, I also, my parents lived in England, so I used to go there a lot. So a lot of upbringing from Africa to India has brought things that you think is normal, but when you come here and you say something and you bring somebody down, kind of emotionally, and I've learned a lot about that, from my own family. My kids, they're all born and raised here. They would say, Dad, that's not the way you should say things. But when you're brought up, so I think those are the kind of things you need to be mindful of. And those are unconscious biases. When you make a mistake, you're not a bad person. It's just because of your upbringing or whatever that is that made you do that. That's unconscious bias. And I wrote a little bit about, and I shared an article from Rebecca Knight that was on Harvard Business Review. Great call out from her about how do you deal with microaggression. And some of the things I was doing it unconsciously, but others I learned from it. So let me just share some of that. You can always go read her. She's written a lot more with case studies. So I would say she's the author of it. But what I took away from it, that sometimes when you say something, I said, oops, that should not have come out of my mouth. Take a breath, you know, step back and say, what did you do? Analyze it, right? And then address it, but don't make it about you. Make it about the person you told whatever you said. Then listen to the person on how that person felt on the comment you made or whatever that is. And then give a sincere apology. You don't overdo it about backgrounds and where because of this and that, but and then consider a follow-up down the road that, hey, I know I did this. Are you okay? And then keep working at it. I mean, those are the kind of things I learned from this article that Rebecca Knight wrote. And 3 do's that I say is make others feel heard, offer genuine apology, and keep striving to be better. But microaggressions is always going to be here to stay. It's not racial. It's just unconscious bias. We all have them. We all have grown up with them. You just have to learn how to deal with them.
Thank you for sharing that, Bharat. When it comes from a leader of your stature, it really makes a lot of difference and impact, is what I personally feel. And it goes well with the factor that you mentioned, empathy. It's like figuring out how others feel and then being genuine and sincere about, you're not perfect. You're part of the learning curve. And thank you for sharing that.
You're perfect when you're dead.
That's a nice way to put it. So tell me this, as a leader, empowering teams, as you mentioned, is very critical for the success, especially for IT teams. With remote work being the norm because of COVID-19 pandemic, what is the one thing you're doing very well to engage with your employees and staff?
So again, as I said, expression, seeing somebody, connecting with somebody is very important to me. And in the business we are in, defense, we actually don't allow video cameras on-prem for the right reasons. But we are now taking an approach as people are working from home. We have 10x employees working from home in pandemic. And we are opening up, allowing them to use video cameras with proper training and education. And we tell employees that when you have taken work at home, your home becomes work. So please treat wherever you are with guarded. Like, don't have smart devices around you, listening devices and all that. We all have a lot of gizmos, right? So we encourage people to turn them off where you're working, and then allow them to connect with mobile devices and our company computers with camera. So that's what I do. I mean, we still not have gone all the way. So a lot of my meetings, even though when I see other folks are not on video because either they may be at work or whatever, I turn mine on because I want them to see me. I'm very open about it. I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk to me. Someday you'll hear about my lunch walks, lunch interviews. I do a lot of walking. So that's how I connect. It's engaging with people is very important in a pandemic time like this.
And unveiling who you are as a person, well, you can look at the painting from your grandson behind as well. So I think it's a nice flavor to understanding Bharat and his life outside work too.
Absolutely.
Now, you've served on several boards, be the Society for Information Management, the Forrester Leadership Board, the CIO Group, Asian Upward Advisory Board, to name a few. Tell us about the legacy that you want to leave behind.
Wow. Well, legacy. I mean, you are. That's great question, by the way.
Thank you.
I would say I want to create the legacy I want to create, and again I'm taking a tenacious goal. Remember, so I'm going to have to grow into somebody who's done this. Help create a level playing field for humanity. That is the legacy I want to leave behind, because I see there is a lot of inequity, and how do we bring a common level playing field? And technology is helping it. Like this podcast probably going to go to people who probably would not get chance to see me or talk to you and I, right? So how do we create a level playing field for sake of humanity? And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for that wonderful wisdom. It's a nice way to reflect on our personal journey so far and creating a level playing field. I think that's very crucial going forward. And I really applaud you for focusing on that aspect of it. Now, you've had a very successful career stint so far, but tell me, have you ever had a low moment in your career that you can share with our listeners?
Absolutely. Everybody has low moment. And again, I'm so attached now, because I consider work to be my second family, right? You always take care of your family. So low moments in my life has been when I was at Newport News and actually now I've lost 3 employees to heart related disease. And that's why you see I'm on a board of American Heart Association. I'm a big believer about health because, if you take care of your body, your heart, you can take care of a lot of things. So those are my low moments. When I lose an employee or anybody, it's a low moment for me, because if it's not your time, then something I could have done. So what can I do to help save one life? Let's say.
I love the way you care about your employees because you don't see them as just a head count, but somebody who's truly engaged in helping you succeed as well as part of your vision. So thank you for sharing that with us. We have a fun rapid fire round for you. Are you ready for it, Bharat?
Absolutely. I'll try my best.
Now tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the following: role model.
I've written 50 of people who influenced my life. The top one is Mahatma Gandhi.
What does happiness mean to you?
Happiness. Smile on my face and whoever is looking at me, and smile on their faces.
Well, we could see that live, so thank you for that. What does success mean to you?
Success. Help change someone's life positively.
What is your native language and one word to describe yourself in it?
Wow. Native language, I know. It's Gujarati, Gujus, those doklas and all that. So I'll ask, from the way I see myself, I'll call it Namra. Namra stands for humble. But I know my family, if I use them, how they see me, they call it Pratibhashali. And that's genius.
Well, I'm so honored to be part of your legacy, and thank you so much for sharing nuggets of wisdom which have really inspired us. Do you have any parting thoughts to our listeners?
All I would say is that follow your passion. If you follow your passion, you will always be successful, but always take care of your health and knowledge.
Thank you so much, Bharat Amin. So that was Bharat Amin, the CEO of Huntington Ingalls Industries. Thanks for joining us on Curryup Startup podcast, Bharat. And to our listeners, the 3 key takeaways from this episode with Bharat Amin, the CIO of Huntington Ingalls Industries is: 1, always feel it's day one, no matter where you are in your career journey. And 2, for driving change, you have to challenge the status quo and be uncomfortable. 3, the 3 most important skill sets that every technologist needs to have to be seen as a leader is: 1, emotional well-being is very critical. 2, build trustworthy relationships and grow your influencer skills with empathy. And 3, set big goals. I hope this conversation with Bharat Amin leaves you inspired, and please check out his articles and his take on life and career as part of his LinkedIn portfolio of work that he does. So thank you so much, Bharat. It was an amazing pleasure to have you on the show, and I really appreciate you for sharing your time amidst our busy schedules and making sure you part all these interesting thoughts about who you are as a person as well.
Glad to be of help. Thank you.
Thank you. To our listeners, this is your host, Priyanka Komala, signing off. Until another interesting episode with another interesting guest, take care of yourself and stay tuned to Curryup Startup podcast on YouTube, and subscribe to us on our social media channels and all other podcast streaming platforms.